The difference between how certain people
indeed
approach this.
Indeed.
And this is the Rush Limbaugh land approach.
This is the pseudo-intellectual Rush Limbaugh approach, and this is still what you're hearing on Fox. So on CNN, S.E. Cupp obfuscates and cites polling data and attempts to turn this into a conversation about what a pointy-headed, arrogant guy Bill Nye is or whatever she's trying to put out there, even as he's just doing his job and trying to...
They got a plane to cover. They got to wrap up this climate change talk.
Exactly. There's stuff to move on to. But meanwhile, over in Foxland, Charles Krauthammer, who I just think it always bears repeating, that this guy is... he is the intellectual... grand master of Fox News. I mean, he is their voice of, or a key voice of just sophistication and sobriety. And, you know, he, of course, at Fox, they had to cover the new White House climate report. And who else would you turn to besides a former disgraced psychiatrist who is a warmonger and has been pretty much wrong in every major piece of political analysis he's done in his career? Obviously, he'd be the person to talk to about the leading edge research on climate. So let's listen to what Charles Krauthammer had to say about the White House report.
99% of physicists were convinced that space and time are fixed until Einstein, working at a patent office, wrote a paper in which he showed that they are not. I'm not impressed by numbers. I'm not impressed by consensus. When I was a psychiatrist, I participated in consensus conferences on how to define depression and mania. These are things that people negotiate in the way you would negotiate a bill, because the science is unstable. Because in the case of climate, the models are changeable. And because climate is so complicated, the idea that we who have trouble forecasting what's going to happen on Saturday in the climate could pretend to be predicting what's going to happen in 30, 40 years.
Climate and weather are different things. Go ahead.
Is absurd. And you always see that no matter what happens, whether it's a flood or it's a drought, whether it's warming or cooling, it's always a result of what is ultimately what we're talking about here, human sin with pollution of carbon. It's the oldest superstition around. It was in the Old Testament. It's in the rain dance of Native Americans. If you sin, the skies will not cooperate. This is quite superstitious, and I'm waiting for science which doesn't declare itself definitive, but is otherwise convincing.
Is he talking about WMDs in Iraq? About superstitions and things that aren't real? And
is he talking about trickle-down economics? Is he talking about the clean skies, the Clear Skies Initiative? Is he talking about if you slash people's food stamps, they'll actually get more money? Is he talking about Paul Ryan's brown bag lunch fantasy? Is he talking about if you just gave, black people suits and ties and had made them stop listening to rap music? I mean, I have no idea what sort of fantasies go on in Krauthammer's mind about anything. But I just want to state really briefly, like those pseudo-intellectual analogies, like Einstein and the patent office. Well, the difference between climate change and research in physics, obviously, is that because these climate models and the climate realities have some bearing on like our actual physical as-lived lives right now, we need to make policy decisions based off of them. And I just have to say, this is exactly the person who would say to the very last minute that we don't really know whether tobacco is bad for you. Keep pushing that analogy. There's no difference. I mean, there was a very long period of time where many, and of course many industry-funded people denied that link. And it's in some ways, it's obviously a simpler issue to address, but anybody who is saying that climate isn't real, that climate change is not caused by greenhouse gas emissions, that there is an endless documented proof of this relationship. And many of the disputes, frankly, have to do with not whether or not it's happening, with just the severity and the danger of it and the policy prescriptions for it. Anybody who says that is the direct equivalent of somebody who denied the link between tobacco and poor health. And also it's someone who never, ever, ever has the right to talk about future generations and the deficit and any other nonsense about preserving the American way, because there is not going to be ways to preserve if we continue on this path. It's absolutely despicable to keep playing these friggin' mind and word games about this when the issue is right in front of our face, and it's also right in front of people's faces, like in Bangladesh, who have no power and cause the least of the problem. It's disgusting.